this is our first chapter. It provides an overview of financial management and financial institutions and the environment. Here are the topics mentioned in this chapter. Let's first take a look at the four major business forms in this country. So the basic legal forms of organizing a firm include sole proprietorship. That's the first one. It is a business owned by a single person. If you have the talent to teach a yoga class or be a plumber, you can start up your own company, and that would be called a proprietorship. It is very easy to establish. You can just go to your city hall and get yourself registered, pay like $40 registration fee, and it starts. So this establishment is the easiest. Another one is called a partnership. And a partnership is a business owned by two or more people. So compared to the sole proprietorship, partnership just involve more owners. Among the owners, there should be a legal binding arrangement. For example, what would be the income distribution and who would inject how much amount of capital. Usually in a partnership, there is a general partner who has the managerial skills and running the daily operations or have the talent for the business. And there's also a financial partner who just provides the capital or the money to start the business. And no matter who provides more capital, the income is allocated on a pro rata basis. If I and Yao Ming found a Chinese restaurant and Yao Ming paid 100% of the money to start the business, as long as I and him have a 50-50% ownership structure, then the income will be half divided between us. And for the sole proprietorship and a partnership, there's no corporate tax because they're not corporations, and we just pay income taxes as the owners of the business. A very important thing we need to know is the pros and cons of proprietorship and partnership, especially compared to corporations. So first of all, the partnership, they have unlimited liabilities. So unlimited liabilities means your liability is not limited to the investment in the business. For example, if my business is worth $10,000, whereas my liability is $15,000. So that means in order to satisfy my liability, not only I have to liquidate my entire business and sell for $10,000 and pay my debt, but also I have to be responsible for the residual $5,000 liabilities. I probably need to sell my personal belongings. I probably are forced to sell my cars or even mortgage. I may even sleep on the street if I'm running on the proprietorship or partnership when the business turns to be really bad, meaning high level of liabilities. The second disadvantage is limited life of the enterprise. So if a owner ceases to live, then the business would cease to exist. And also the ownership would be very hard to transfer. So if you have your own business and you want to transfer it to another person, then you have to look around and find the interested investors and do rounds and rounds negotiations. So that's difficult to sell your shares. In comparison, if you are running a corporation, your ownerships are represented in stock shares, and you can easily buy or sell shares in the open market, and that transferring ownership is extremely easy. The fourth disadvantage is difficulty to raise large amounts of cash. So if you are doing things privately, like a partnership or partnership, you don't get access to the market and you're not on the map. The investors around the world will not know you if you're just running a plumbing store in the city of Oak Lawn. So if you become a corporation and work with other financial institutions, then you will be able to raise large amount of cash, but not if you are a partnership or partnership. So I have beaten down this form of businesses. So let me mention something about the advantages. So one of the advantages is less regulation compared to corporations. You just run your business, doing everything within the legal framework, and there's not specific regulations except those imposed by the industry. And another big advantage is there's no corporate tax. All right, as I mentioned earlier, your tax is income tax. It's just like the tax on your salary, on your stock investment. The tax from your business income is part of your income tax. There's no corporate tax. But if you're running a corporation, not only you need to pay corporate tax, but also you will still pay the income tax. All right, so the major role here we want to focus in this class is corporation. So compared to the other kind of businesses, the corporation is a standard method for raising large amounts of cash. So take Apple, for example. When Steve Jobs and his partner started the company in their garage, it was a partnership. Since the business grew and they began to realize we need more capital to expand the business, so the partnership, that structure does not suffice. So they have to become a corporation, making their ownership or shares easily transferable so they can sell their shares to the general investor public and then they can gather large amount of capital. So that's one of the major advantage for being a corporation. And the second advantage is limited liabilities. Just to take the $10,000, $15,000 example, so if my corporation is worth $10,000 and my liability is $15,000, which is $5,000 over. So if I claim bankruptcy, then I just need to sell off my business, get the $10,000 to pay my debt, and the residual $5,000 bill, I'm not responsible for it. Okay, so that's a limited liability. So the debt holders would eat up that $5,000 debt. And another advantage here is a perpetual life. So the corporation, theoretically speaking, could last forever. When Steve Jobs died, Apple still are functioning well, just because the ownership of the company has been transferred many times to other investors. Major disadvantage for corporation is double taxation. Not only the corporate owners pay corporate taxes, but also they have to pay taxes on their earnings. So if you're running a corporation, you make a profit. Before the profit, there is a corporate tax levied, and after the profit would either be distributed as a dividend or as retained earnings, which would lead to higher stock prices, and you would be charged for this dividends and capital gains for taxes, and that is income tax. So as a corporate owner, you are charged both corporate tax and income tax. So this is called double taxation, and this is a major disadvantage for running a corporation. Realizing such a problem, the U.S. Congress established this law and allows a special form of S corporation. S here stands for small. So for the small corporations, they can be taxed as partnership, good for them, no double taxation, and they can still enjoy all these advantages as a regular corporation. And for the corporations, when they started, they are running privately as a private corporation, and then they start realizing that we want to grow bigger, and some of the founder of the corporation wants to sell their shares and get some cash so they can buy a big mansion or buy islands in the Caribbean. So they will think about the step of initial public offering or IPO. So when a company becomes IPO, their stocks would be publicly available to trade, to purchased by the investor public in the entire world. And then the company owners would be able to raise large amount of cash. They can spend the cash on themselves, or they can just use the cash to expand their business by more factories, build more production lines, or acquire existing businesses somewhere else. Also, if they have this initial public status, they can keep issuing debt and equity, use their public status to gather more capital from the public, either by issuing debt or issuing equity. So if they issue debt, that will be called a corporate bond, which is our chapter 6. If they issue corporate equity, that will be stocks, and it will be covered in our chapter 7. The last form here is limited liability company or limited liability partnership. And these are used by professional firms in accounting, law, and architecture. These forms are hard to establish, and there are a lot of paperwork to follow, and the legal structure is very delicate. But these forms of businesses would enjoy both the perks of a corporation and a partnership. So these perks are no corporate taxes, good for them, only personal income tax. And they have a limited liabilities, so when the business goes sour, they don't have to sleep on the street. And also, as I mentioned, these forms are complicated to form because the IRS knows that they do not pay corporate tax. The IRS would do everything in their power to identify these companies as corporations so they can charge double taxation. So they are always on the radar of the IRS. Having covered all these forms of businesses, let me just introduce what's going on in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. Here is an outlook of the companies located in the Chicago metropolitan area, as well as companies in the state of Illinois outside the Chicago metro area. And the companies could be divided into public companies and private companies. The public companies, as I mentioned earlier, are corporations that are listed on the stock exchange where investors can buy and sell their shares. And the private companies include private held corporations or limited liability companies or limited liability partnerships. And here it tells you where the data come from. And this research is based on the Economic Summit, which was organized by St. Xavier University and the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago in the year of 2015. And it was reported by the Chicago Tribune, and you can Google search the detailed information for this economic event. Back to the overview, you will see that for the public companies, here are the major players in the state of Illinois. They include Boeing, Discover, Northern Trust Bank, United Airlines, Walgreens, and also McDonald's. For the private companies, there are also some large players, but to be honest with you, before I conducted this research, I hardly know these companies. So if we look at their locations, so you will see that the Chicago metro area not only include the Chicago city in Cook County, but also some other adjacent area or counties and some part of Wisconsin and some part of Indiana. In terms of a number of companies, for the public corporations in the Chicago metro area, there are 205 of them. At the outside Chicago metro area, there are 26, and these 26 firms include John Deere, Caterpillar, and so on. For the private companies, the numbers are much larger in thousands or 10,000s. So in the Chicago metro area, there are 8,000 private companies, and outside the Chicago metro area, within the state of Illinois, there are over 11,000 companies. So what I really want to show you here is how influential this limited number of public corporations are in our economy. As you can see this column chart, if you look at the sales, the total assets, and net income, these key financials of Illinois companies, the Chicago public companies, which are represented in the green column here, dwarfed all the other counterparts. And the other counterparts are non-Chicago public, non-Chicago private, and Chicago private. So that means the public corporations plays a much more important role in our economy. So the revenue here represent their market outreach, and the total assets here represent the assets under control as well as employment. And if you look at this pie chart, it conveys the same information. The Chicago Public Corporations, again, takes the most of the total revenue of the state and most of the total assets of the state as compared to all the other kind of firms. If you look at the number of Chicago public corporations, including Boeing, Northern Trust, and Walgreens, you will see their number, the counts, actually kept increasing until the year of 1997, and then it declined since then. But the total assets of these companies did not decline. It actually kept steadily increasing since then. So that means the companies, although the number got reduced, but the influence did not perish. And if you look at the total assets adjusted for inflation, when I measured in 2009 dollars, the total assets also increased steadily. When you see the four major industries in this chart, the yellow curve represents the financial industry, the blue curve represents the manufacturing industry, and also you see a transportation and retail industries. So there is a big decline of assets for the financial industry, but that's not because some companies get bankrupt. It's because two companies there were acquired by some other companies outside the state of Illinois. For example, Bank One was acquired by US Bank, and HFC, another financial firm at that time, was acquired by HSBC, a British bank. So if I adjust such acquisitions, then you will see the total assets actually kept increasing for the financial industry. And if you look at the revenues generated by the firms, you will see that the manufacturing firm actually have the highest total revenue, whereas the financial industry, again, is in color of a yellow, does not have an impressive total revenue compared to manufacturing. And that basically means the financial industry is not as efficient in terms of generating revenue as compared to the manufacturing companies in Chicago. If you look at the public companies in the state of Illinois, you will see that Illinois beats all the other states in the Midwest in terms of sales, total assets, and net income. And our closest counterparts would be Michigan, where the automobile factories are heavily located in. And if you look at this chart, it shows the total assets of the companies across the Midwest region in this country. You will see that many public firms are located in the Chicago area, and you will also see Detroit, you will also see the Minnesota, the Twin City area, and you also see a big column in Omaha, Nebraska. So we have Chicago Bulls here, and we also have the Vikings playing a role. And who is in Nebraska? Guess what? That's Warren Buffett. His company called Berkshire Hathaway has a huge market capitalization, which plays an important role in the financial industry. And here is a hot zone of revenue generation. This time it's not total assets, but revenue. And you will see again the state of Illinois plays an important role. As you see in this heat map, a lot of revenues are generated in the Chicago area. And you also see Michigan. This is the Detroit area, and definitely the East Coast area like New York and Boston plays another important role. And you will see the coast area. Here is San Francisco, where Uber, Apple, these high-tech firms are located in. And you also see the Los Angeles area where the Hollywood firms are. And here in Texas, you see Dallas and Houston, these two major economic areas. And in terms of a managed efficiency, what you see here is in terms of total assets, New York has the highest amount of total assets from the public corporations as compared to Illinois right here. And in terms of sales, Texas actually generated the highest amount of sales by public corporations compared to New York, California, and Illinois. But we are not sad by this result. Although the state of Illinois is not as sizable as California, New York, or Texas, but we do operate in a very efficient way. As you can see, the sales over assets is a total assets turnover ratio, and that represents the operating efficiency. That means with limited assets, we can generate a higher revenue. And this is a designation that we should be proud of ourselves. If we take a look at the private held companies, not public corporations, the state of Illinois here generated the highest amount of net income compared to the private firms in other states. And also, if you take a look at the total assets, the state of Illinois doesn't have the highest amount of total assets. And in Massachusetts, there are a lot of private interest companies. That's why the total assets there is pretty high.